What if the legends were never meant to be legends? Long before modern history was written, ancient cultures across the globe told remarkably similar stories of giants, massive beings who towered over ordinary men. From the Nephilim of biblical tradition to the Titans of Greece, from Native American legends to the myths of ancient Mesopotamia, accounts of giant beings appear again and again across civilizations separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Coincidence? Shared imagination? Or memories of something long forgotten? For centuries, reports of enormous skeletal remains have surfaced in newspapers, local folklore, and archaeological rumors, only to disappear into obscurity. Mainstream historians dismiss these stories as exaggerations, hoaxes, or misunderstandings. Yet the question remains, why has nearly every major civilization preserved tales of giants in its earliest records? Were giants merely symbols of power and chaos? Are they echoes of a forgotten chapter in human history? Or do these ancient stories reveal something about our past that is yet to be fully understood? The deeper we dig, the larger the mystery becomes. So today, we're stepping into the shadows between history and legend, giants, lost civilizations, ancient mysteries, and extraordinary phenomena that have survived the rise and fall of empires, the birth of science, and the skepticism of the modern age. Because the greatest mystery may not be whether these stories are true, it's why humanity keeps telling them.
Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And then again, on another special topic like this today, we got Miranda back in here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going good.
I'm surprised, Miranda, you would want to join us for this episode.
Okay.
I really do. I never really kind of pictured you as somebody that really would want to dive into giants before.
She's huge into mythical stuff.
To me, if it was something to do with medical or stuff that, I figured, she'd be all into that. But giants, I didn't think that. But hey, what a surprise!
My first degree is actually in anthropology.
Oh, okay.
And so, I have long studied all sorts of things that get hidden and covered up in the anthropological realm, and stories and folklore is always part of anthropology because it is the story of people.
Yeah.
So, this is right up my alley.
I love
Great.
That's awesome.
We are recording on June the 14th, if I may say that.
Okay.
And this weekend was the Army Ball.
Oh, okay.
And all of the military has the Army Ball, the Marine Ball, the Navy Ball. But going forward, it warms my heart to know that now one of the branches will be having space balls.
I had a sneaky suspicion the second. I was like, uh-oh.
It's heading that way.
That's better than the other one he was planning on telling.
Okay.
I got that one. I'm going to work that one in. Don't worry. Okay. I'm going to work that one in, too. Don't you worry, dear.
Okay.
Oh, joy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about this story and what it all, because I've heard of this, and obviously again, a person such as myself who has kind of been raised in church and has been also interested in digging into some interesting stuff of the Bible and the kind of I don't know. You feel like at least for me, if you've been around it for long enough, you hear tales of these outlandish things and books that aren't in the Bible and all that other kind of stuff. And obviously giants comes up as one of those things that...
It seems that every major civilization has had something to say about giants.
Yeah.
Even the Native Americans.
Interesting.
Had something.
They had a lot to say about it in their oral records.
Yeah. And you got to remember, they were all oral records.
Oh, yeah.
There was no written. It was all stories handed down. And even they had something to say about giants.
Yeah, I saw some stories come out. I remember when we went into Iraq. there were some stories. I saw some YouTube videos of supposedly soldiers had uncovered some caves that had giant bones, and I even saw one story that was actual giant that was killed and was carted off to some secret military lab somewhere. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? I think they call it the Giant of Kandahar.
Well, they had the similar things that came out when Mount Rainier blew up. Remember? And that the military came in and took giant Sasquatch or giant creatures off the mountain, and it was a big cover-up. Remember, if you recall, you can kind of tie those stories. They're very similar.
Was that? I think there's a Mount. It may be Rainier. Was it Mount Shasta? Isn't it also in Washington?
Mount Shasta has has its own folklore about that mountain opens up and there's all sorts of beings and creatures that live in Mount Shasta.
Something along those lines. It was some weird stuff with that, and I think that's more on the UFO side. But and
one of the big stories right now is a Benedictine priest named Father Anselm Rudder, and I hope I don't mess that up, but he is supposedly the last person to interview a captive giant back in 1884.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Yes.
This is interesting. Where did they?
No one is real. The Catholic Church has buried it.
I'm sure they
almost completely.
Yeah,
because they're not releasing very much information on it. And it was an interesting story, and I checked it out. Is this a TikTok or Facebook bullshit story?
Yeah.
And maybe not. And it's kind of interesting to me how recent that story is, because supposedly that was a live giant. And some of the things that this giant said is what caused the church to button it down.
Well, that'd be very interesting what the giant had to say.
Yeah. But that's how recent, we keep saying folklore this and, 1,000 years back and 2,000, buried prehistoric bones. But this was not necessarily in our lifetime, but in our grandparents' or great-grandparents' lifetime, that there was supposedly a live giant in the world.
Well, I mean the Bible itself gives evidence of a giant race of people. I mean, we've all kind of heard the story of the Nephilim, and there's different kind of interpretations of that and what all that was all about. But it's interesting that even within the biblical text, I mean, there's obviously these giants survived the antediluvian flood. And kind of appear because there is a story there of the Israelites encountering some very large people that they would have considered to be giants. So I think that's kind of hearkening back to something else. I don't know where I stand with giants. I mean, I of course I'm pretty open to a lot of things, but from what I hear, there was at the turn of the century in the 19th century, really when archaeology really kind of started kind of getting its act together, so to speak. I say that loosely because, we got people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson that are kind of pushing those kind of established norms of how civilization developed and on and on and on.
Well, before archaeology was, let's just take the gold, put it on display, see how much money we can make of it. But then toward the turn of the century, it became more scientific. Let's find out the truth. Let's just don't reap the rewards from it. What's it about? And Graham Hancock and people like that are really putting a face to what really happened. What's the truth? Not just who did what.
And I'll go out there and I'll be contrary, because I don't think that the mainstream archaeological world does want the truth, because anybody that steps out of line, they face career suicide. You have to toe the party line. You're not allowed to publish anything that's outside the realm. Michael Cremo has made books and books and books about this very topic, about all the different things of hidden archaeology. And it's very much, it's the same thing in medicine. It's the same thing in a lot of academia. And, if you are in academic circles, you have to toe the party line. Science should be always, finding the newest, latest, greatest, what is cutting edge. But it really hasn't been that way. It's all about supporting the party line. And in the archaeological world, you might have heard of something called parts, which is out of place parts and out of place, out of time and out of place objects. And we have so many of these in the historical record that will not be acknowledged. It's like when you hear about people finding a piece of gold chain in a coal in a coal mine type of thing. How would it get there? Or like a little gold vase, or some type of thing that was found in a place that it should not exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's covered up though. Like I brought one of my books here that talks about how throughout the history of the United States, as Americans were settling the country, we had great big earth mounds, structures that were built all across the United States. We have some here in Louisiana. The scale of them, by and large, is massive. People typically build things to the scale of their own size.
Right.
So the scale of some of these earth mounds is absolutely insane. But in some of these mounds, large skeletons were supposedly found. And, it really wasn't, people just accepted that because it was in the Bible that there was giants, and people thought that there was giants, and it was not a big deal. But after the Civil War, there was a new person at the Smithsonian, and it ramped up on covering up that part of American history.
Well, the Smithsonian's always taken it pretty hard because they've covered up a lot.
Sure have.
And they get hit in the nose pretty hard a lot because they won't come forth and just say, hey, this is what we found.
Yeah, I'd kind of piggyback, what Miranda was saying regarding the, I would say, the more, I guess, scientific approach that archaeology took as the science matured to a degree. But there was a move away from, I would call it, they called it was catastrophism, into anything that potentially could link back to the biblical flood, because that was the understanding of how the world operated. There was the flood, and then what came after the flood, and then what was before the flood. And giants were a part of the world before the flood. So I think anything that kind of hearkened to that, I think there was kind of a shunting away. And so basically you kind of lock down a lot of those stories there's stories of finding bones that they just threw in the ocean, that they were all over the place, they just threw away. So,
that's happening right now. Like you go to countries like New Zealand and Australia, all of the Aboriginal archaeological finds from the past, 250 years of occupation, they've all been given back to the natives, and they've all been ceremoniously buried. So we have lost all of that potential. And we know that those people, the evidence that we have, the archaeological artifacts that we get, it's like the ancient Egypt ones. It's the same thing. Was it the current Egyptians that are the ancient Egyptians? No, they really belongs to all of mankind. But when you're pigeonholing it into whatever culture happens to be in that area now, and you're giving them complete autonomy and sovereignty over those archaeological records, mankind is the one that's losing out on that.
Well, if you look at whatever his name is, and this is where my brain damage comes in. The head archaeologist in Egypt, he controls
Hawass.
That's
it. Yeah.
He
Dawi
controls,
Hawass.
every person that is an archaeologist in that country. And if you think about something that doesn't fit his narrative, you'll never make it back into Egypt to do anything ever again. So this is how they control the narrative that's coming out. The Egyptians built the pyramids. No, they didn't. That's been proven multiple times, but that's the narrative you have to say if you ever want to make it back into Egypt again. And look, as an archaeologist, kind of that's where you want to go, except now all of a sudden we're starting to find these other places that are just as interesting.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
Like even in Louisiana, there's a pyramid here in Louisiana.
Well, I believe I think I saw a news article regarding one of the mounds at Louisiana State University.
Mm-hmm.
They have dated that thing now back to as I think it may even be older than the pyramids.
Yes, I saw that too. Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's sometimes you got to kind of you don't want to just kind of let your mind run off in a direction. But I just think there's something
People
there.
don't want to adjust the narrative because if you go to the common belief system right now in archaeology and in the world of archaeology is that people cross the Bering Strait from Siberia. They cross the Bering Strait, they come down through Alaska, and they slowly made their way down to the Americas. But we have archaeological sites like the one here in Louisiana. We have ones throughout South America that far predate anything that crossed the Bering Strait.
Yeah.
But genetically, most native populations are closest genetically to people in Siberia. So
Well, they have.
do we
they
come
have
in
Jewish
waves?
DNA.
Yeah.
They have Jewish DNA. The Native Americans have, and you go, wow, that's kind of crazy.
But people don't want to acknowledge that because it doesn't. You can't wrap it up in a nice little bow and say that everybody came down. We've found evidence of Chinese coins. We found, in the Americas that that are literally thousands of years old. There's evidence that Irish priests came over to America well before Columbus did. And then we have the Vinland stuff in Newfoundland where the Vikings came and settled and had a settlement before Columbus. But everyone wants to say Columbus settled America. Columbus found America. But did he really? But it doesn't fit the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just not going to get far if that's the research that you're trying to do.
Well, I learned something that speaking of like anthropology, I've got a friend of mine that she is a professor at Louisiana State University, and that's her specialty.
Giants?
Not giants. Just I forget exactly. I know she goes to South Africa a lot and does research there, but she's basically told me, says that, human beings, as you and I look at each other today, go back 300,000 years.
Right.
They really do. So, because I was always curious about that, is how far back would, if you look at somebody from that period, would you say, okay, that's a human being?
Yeah.
I had no idea it went back that far. I really didn't.
That's a whole lot of history.
That's established. That's like regular, published, established science.
Yeah.
They have a few little pockets where they found different caves where they found modern hominids like Homo sapien sapien in particular. Like I'm thinking of two different spots in Africa in particular what they have found these. But we know that there was waves of, I don't want to call it immigration, but that's really what it was. Mm-hmm. Because you have, Homo sapien neanderthalensis, which was the Neanderthals. They were very, very similar to us. Like literally only a % or 2 difference. And you have to figure, genetically, we're almost the same genetically as chimpanzees and gorillas. So the difference between different types of hominid is tiny. But in the archaeological record, if there was a Neanderthal walking down the street, you would be able to tell that they were different. Would they look like a human? Absolutely. But they would have a very short forehead. They would have a heavy brow. They would have an occipital bun, which is like a bony protuberance on the back of their neck. So it might look like they just had a really thick neck that was sitting on their shoulders. They would have been a lot more muscular and a lot stockier than a typical person. The women would probably be shorter. The men would probably be on the shorter side. But it wouldn't be outside of the realm of, I think most of the Neanderthal men's skeletons kind of fall in that 5'3" to 5'6" type of range. So that wouldn't be out of place in modern society. It certainly wouldn't have been out of place 100 years ago when the average man was 5'3" to 5'6".
Right.
So it's just like, and then we know that there was like the Australopithecine florensis, the little short people that they've found throughout the Philippines and everything, that now they know that there really was short little people running around. And, we've got all these different types of hominids that have kind of popped up in history, and they lasted for a little while and then they disappeared. And there's some people that say that Bigfoot is either Neanderthals or they're like Gigantopithecus or one of these other type of hominids, because pretty much every culture in the world has Bigfoot legends as well. So you have to take the 10,000 foot view. If every culture has a flood story, if every culture has giants, if every culture has a Bigfoot type of creature, when you hear hoofbeats, you should think of horses, not zebras. You have to go with what the common idea is. And so there's just too many coincidences there for you not to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of giants, do you think that if people are 5'3" to 5'6", something that's 7 feet tall would be considered a giant?
Oh, absolutely.
Probably,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask that earlier. I was like, do we have like I know the answer is probably no, but like, do we have like a standard for these like giants? Because I think
there is. If you follow the record, most of the giants were anywhere from 7 up to 12 feet tall.
Yeah, that's
wow.
It's quite the range, and it's depending on region. Like in Turkey, they all tended to be taller. The British giants tended to be more in that 7 to 9 foot range.
Right.
But pretty much all of the stories about giants, they all kind of fell in that range.
Yeah. Isn't like the world record, like the Guinness World Record for the tallest man is like 10 something feet, or is it?
Well, I think the tallest American was that Robert Wadlow. I think Robert Wadlow.
I never heard
and
of
he
him.
was
I never
8
heard of
foot
some-
11.
Yeah, I never heard of any human even being 10 feet tall. I've heard of the 8 foot, 8 foot something.
Well, Andre the Giant was almost 8 foot, wasn't he? 7
He was
foot,
7 something.
7'10" or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
what I'm
that.
saying. But anything bigger, I haven't seen anything 9 feet or taller.
They said
You're right.
on the filming of The Princess Bride that Andre the Giant let out a fart that was 35 seconds long. And Rob Reiner looked over at him and said, "You okay?" He goes, "I am now, boss."
You're right. His name is Robert Wadlow in the United States, and he was 8 feet 11 inches. So
Jeez,
it was 1
he's
inch away from
almost-
nine.
He's
feet.
almost 9 feet tall. That's incredible.
Yeah.
But in the modern record, all the people that have been found to be giants, they had a genetic disease, like it's a genetic condition.
Mm-hmm.
People like Tony Robbins has the same thing. It's I want to say, was it acromegaly?
Tony Robbins is a giant?
Yep. It's all. Let me.
It's like he has like the condition or whatever that.
Yeah,
Acromegaly.
that's it.
I just couldn't think of the word. But it is a pituitary problem where your pituitary goes into overgrowth, overdrive, and you have that. You'll see people that there was always been some tall people in the historical record, like Lincoln. He was like what 6'4", 6'5", which was huge for the time.
Yeah.
But again, he had a genetic disease. So he had Marfan's disease, which is, kind of the consensus, although they're changing their idea of whether he had Marfan's or another condition at this time. But you'll notice most of the giants or people that have been very tall have been very thin. They have that long, thin, lean. They're not carrying a lot of muscle mass. Andre the Giant was kind of the exception to the rule.
But so was Goliath from the Bible. He was supposedly 9'6" tall, equivalent, but he was kind of more of
had girth to him.
He had girth to him. He was kind of bigger. Andre the Giant was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said he drank between like 100 and 200 beers a night.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
lot
Imagine
of
what
liquid.
they would blow on a DUI.
It could just when I saw it, because I used to sometimes watch some of that wrestling, and I remember him picking up Hulk Hogan like Hulk Hogan was a
And Hulk
Action
Hogan's
figure.
6'7".
Yeah, he's like he was like a little baby
Yeah.
next to Andre the Giant. He truly, you would put Andre the Giant in the ancient world. He
Oh,
would
yeah.
be
A giant. He would be a giant.
mythic creature.
You put a sword in that
Yeah,
man's
yeah.
hand and a
Scary-
spear.
scary.
That
An
would
ogre.
be
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be quite an impressive being to look at in armor and everything
That's
else.
crazy.
So
But
yeah,
in folklore, it's funny you mentioned that. All of the giants were very aggressive.
Yes.
They were warlike.
Andre the Giant was a sweetheart, they said. He was just a kind soul.
But I'm talking about history
yeah,
wise.
No, I
exactly.
understand.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it back to Andre the Giant because he was just an interesting person.
Right.
There's a researcher that did a meta-analysis of all the different folklore around the world, and they found 3 things that were in common with the vast majority of the giant folklore was that they all had red hair, they were furry or fuzzy or hairy, and they ate people. They were cannibalists.
Really?
Yes. And then there was about half of the records also quoted them as having 24 fingers and toes. They were all claimed to have an extra digit. So, and that is across culture around the world.
Yes.
About half of the record shows that.
Really?
So
there probably was some like genetic situation going on. Wow, that's
Which to me goes back to
Aliens.
well,
okay. Well,
I mean, I think it kind of that even you get into the biblical accounts and they have an extra. If I recall, there is something to the effect they do have an extra digit.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, of course, the actual the canon itself,
Right.
doesn't have a ton of information other than there's mentions of giants and what that may mean.
Right.
You would have to go into extra biblical sources to maybe derive a more better kind of picture of what these Nephilim look like and the size they were. But yeah, there's all kind of stories regarding that.
Right.
I mean, if you get into the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, all these books.
Numbers has giants. Samuel, the Book of Samuel
That's
has
right.
giants.
All in-
Genesis 6.4 is where it all got all started. There's I think I read in the main Bible, Genesis, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Samuel are the main books that quote things about giants. And where did I read it? I saw that Genesis 6:4 notes that the Nephilim were on earth and also afterward, which referred to all humanity perishing in the flood except the line of Cain. But the line of Cain and the giants survived the flood.
Right.
So
that's why I think that little snippet that was put in Genesis there, I think that was probably lifted out of an earlier text, probably coming from another tradition.
Yeah.
I've told people a lot that the first 10 chapters of Genesis were written after. When it came to the ancient Israelites,
Yeah.
the only reason the first 10 chapters of Genesis, because they had to have some sort of beginning to where all people came from before Israel became kind of a subset of its own people from the greater population that existed. So you can kind of just like the Tower of Babel and some of these other, I think it's capturing something else. I've always said, I've always think it's picking up some of the disaster that occurred during the Younger Dryas period, 12,400 years ago. I think some of these flood myths come from that period of time where the earth was going through a tremendous weather,
anomaly type situation,
I mean, whether you accept it was a giant solar flare, or there was a cosmic impact in the ice sheets that caused massive amounts of flooding, that would cause it.
So you said something earlier that one of these mountains supposedly opens up.
Shasta.
Well, if you actually look at some of the original text of the Bible, the flooding wasn't caused just by rain. Most of the water came from the inner earth and up. It wasn't just rain. So when you look at that, what are these lands inside? Everybody, what's the story? Middle Earth and the journey to the center of the earth and stuff like that. They've always had these kind of like mythological places that you could go inside the earth. Well, most of the water from the flood, and it's in the Bible, says it came from the earth and up, from the ground
they call things the fountains of the deep.
Yes,
as
the
the way
fountains of
they
the deep.
describe it.
So most that's the rain. Yeah, it rained.
Right.
Okay, it rained,
Right.
but you're not going to get that much water, but it comes up. So
It
what?
sounds like the 2016 flood here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
it-
kidding, huh?
It sounded like my colonoscopy.
Oh,
Yesterday. Is what it sounded like.
No,
That's a good flood there.
Ooh, Lord.
Yikes.
But
Let it flow.
but when you think about it, that what if there are places that they could be? What if Shasta opens up and Bigfoot comes out every 15 years?
Okay.
or something. There's obviously space underneath that we haven't discovered yet.
Oh, I think there's probably a lot within you. You get into Hollow Earth and those kind of
Gosh.
things. Now you can really get into a lot of things regarding
Well, what about that Russian attempt to drill to the
deepest
core?
hole. Yeah.
They
yeah.
were going to the core of the earth, which is pretty stupid because if that magma ever shot out of there, we'd all be dead. But they heard screaming. They could hear voices at the bottom of that drill. I don't remember how far they got.
Yeah, I
But-
forget the name of that
Yeah.
hole. That's the deepest hole on the planet.
Mm-hmm. And they could hear screaming and voices down at the bottom of the hole.
Interesting.
I mean,
Which brings us back to your colonoscopy.
well, Lord,
No.
yes.
Oh gosh.
Because all kind of things would come up.
Hey, you know what? All joking aside, they found a Snickers bar that I had eaten back in the 70s.
No.
It had lodged in there.
It had lodged
Twinkie.
in there.
A Twinkie. Those
Yikes.
things don't
All
go
those
away.
all those preservatives and
Yeah.
chemicals they put in that food, it's still
Yeah.
probably looking pretty good.
Dang.
You know how your mom always told you not to chew your gum and swallow it?
No.
They found it.
Yikes. That's crazy.
But, with, going back, Epic of Gilgamesh, they talk about
I was
giants.
just fixing to go on to that one too. Yep.
The throughout the British Isles, they've got very strong records of giants. Pretty much every culture has records of giants.
The Vikings
The
have
Greeks, the
Jotun.
Norse.
Greeks.
Yep.
And, one of the things that I find is very interesting is that look at all of the structures that man has built on Earth right now. Everything is built to scale for the human size. So while we still might have skyscrapers that are 150, floors high.
But they have 10-foot floors
They
all
have
the way up.
10-foot floors. So everything is in proportion. You look at most of the ancient monuments, the doorways are 18 or 24 or even higher feet tall. So, and it's like you will see, like we have, there's 3 structures just in Rome that are ancient Roman, 2,000-year-old structures that where the doors are like 24 feet high. The locking mechanism to lock the door is about 15, 20 feet up in the air. So it's not even like you were saying, well, we built a big door just to, to scare or wow people that
intimidate,
came into our area because there was no way for them to lock the door with how tall it was. So, and then, you go into the ancient Egypt ruins and, throughout history, you look at all of these things, and it does seem to be that a lot of the historical legends, these giants were either warlike or they were architects, and they were building and creating a lot of these monuments that are left that the size is just completely disproportionate for modern or ancient man. And I even went and I looked up how tall people were throughout history because it has varied. The more agricultural we are, the shorter we tend to get. and the more hunter-gatherer are, the bigger we tended to get. So it fluctuated throughout history. But throughout all the time periods where people were building civilizations, people were short. So why were we building massive, massive stone monuments?
Yeah, I mean, just what they found with Göbekli Tepe. I think that, speaking about the archaeologist in Egypt, I think his kind of grip on him dating the age of the pyramids has been kind of shaken a little bit because of what they found with Göbekli Tepe, because it dates back to over 12,000 years, which predates what they say the pyramids were built by thousands of years, which...
I mean, even we did an episode on this. If you just look at the water erosion of the pyramids and the Sphinx, they're a minimum of 15,000 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly believe that I think these giants are remnants of what was prior to the Younger Dryas disaster. I truly believe if human beings have been on this the way we look for as long as we have, 300,000. You think of 300,000 years.
That's a lot of history.
That's a lot of history.
Yeah.
That's a lot of potential for civilizations to rise and fall. I mean, even a 5,000-year-old civilization, that's nothing in 300,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so I truly believe that there was probably some sort of high civilization that had developed and then all of a sudden got completely annihilated. I mean, I just think they just never recovered from what that period of time. And then as time went on, then people ascribe religious significance to certain things that, the pagans would say, well, the gods grew angry with Atlantis and it flooded that. And in the Bible, it's men grew sinful, right? There's somehow we screw something up.
Yeah.
We get off the path, and then we get kind of slapped back into the Stone Age again.
Right.
So I think that they are remnants of probably why they were able to build some of these absolutely fabulous remains. You can imagine what they probably looked like when they first were built.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think of Poverty Point. I mean, have you had a chance to go to Poverty Point in Louisiana?
I have not.
It's incredible.
Or at least not in recent years. I probably have gone.
It's an incredible sight.
Yeah.
I mean, just something that massive, just out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
And you're going, well, how can just regular people build that? I mean, so I just, a part of me feels like, I think there's a little bit more to the story there. So,
if you're breaking it down to kind of a religious or spiritual kind of a context, there's, according to the Christians, there's evidence through written word that the Nephilim, the fallen angels, were cast down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Bible, 5 to 6 of them, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's 5, were cast down to the Euphrates River, underneath the river, and put into jail cells. So was that the only ones?
Was that after? I'm trying to remember
that
the
was
story.
The fall of Lucifer. When he did his thing, some of his followers were cast out. 5 of them were cast down to the Euphrates rivers, and that is one of the prophecies of the end times coming, when the Euphrates River dries up and those 5 demons, fallen angels, are released to cause havoc on the earth. And the Euphrates River has dried up, and they found the jail cells. I
think I saw that article on that.
They found the cells.
I'm just trying to...
they found the cells empty.
Right. I'm just trying to understand, because angels... I mean, it's what we understand of angels are spiritual beings, so they don't really necessarily have bodies per se like you and I have. Now, maybe they did, or maybe they do. Who knows? I'm trying to think, because
how literal do you want to go? If God created us in His image,
well, that's true, but
He created us in His image. But when you look at in the Bible, if you look at some of the true descriptions of the angels and the demons, they're nothing like these wonderful, pretty, beautiful winged, creatures. They're nothing like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's a human creation,
right? I mean, that's kind of our way of trying to picture something supernatural in our brain. But yeah, they would have been a spiritual being. But now within the book of Enoch, I think that's where you get stories of named angels.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's Samyaza, and there's a few others. One angel taught mankind, how to make charms and how to do this. It kind of reminds me of the old Greek myth with Prometheus, and Prometheus given mankind fire, which Zeus didn't like. And so what did he do? He basically put him up on the mountain and chained him down, and I think he had his liver devoured by buzzards and it would regenerate, and that was his punishment for, in essence, allowing mankind to learn things that they were not supposed to learn. So in the Enoch story, it's angels that come down. They were watchers. There's books they have now uncovered in the what's the discovery they made in Egypt, or the Nag Hammadi or whatever it's called, but they found all these Bible texts in these clay jars.
Oh yeah.
I forget the name of it.
I don't know.
I'll probably think of it in a minute. But in there's a book called the Book of the Giants, Book of the Watchers, and in that these named when God created the earth, he has set these angels to kind of watch over the planet.
Yeah.
And they started looking at
Dead Sea Scrolls?
The Dead Sea Scrolls, right. And they started seeing these women, looking at them as attractive and as somebody they would want to take for a wife, which I find strange, because if you're made of spirit,
right,
then you don't really have those desires. You can't really do anything with that.
But even the Greek mythological gods came down.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's a parallel there, I think, that's going on, because I find a lot of that behavior very similar to what you see in the ancient Greek with Zeus lusting over these human women.
Zachary sticking with the Anunnaki, that ties it all. Is same story, different page, same story.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's a common thread there. And then he goes back to is this extraterrestrial here that we got going on? Is it kind of reaching up to? Is it maybe reaching out to that? I mean. Yeah. It's not far-fetched to think that
if they were tangible beings that came here, and they were either temporally or physically far away from their own civilization, they might be like conquerors at any time period, where they took up with the native women. They killed a lot of the native men, and they took up with the native women because that was the only thing that was accessible.
Yep.
And the Nephilim, that's what they were supposedly was the offspring of the offspring of the men of the gods and the daughters of man. So, and that's exactly what they were. They were never numerous.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of them, but they were always there in the background, and every culture had them, which is you have to wonder. Whenever you see something that is systemically across the board, people don't make up the same story. There has to be a semblance of truth somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So, and in the Americas, where everybody looked very homogenous, they had very pigmented skin, they had black hair, very straight hair, they don't grow facial hair, they don't grow body hair. And they talk about these giant, furry, red-headed men. Why? And why is it that giants across all cultures have the same features? Unless there's a hint of truth or a thread of truth in that.
Interesting.
I think they're remnants of a previous culture that got wiped out. I think they were this last bit of survivors that
was some of the most interesting stuff we learned about from the whole Sphinx episode, I think, was the fact that there's all that is probably most likely, hypothetically, much older than people are saying that it is, and what civilization might have created that if it wasn't the Egyptians, and the Egyptians claimed to have built it, that kind
History's
of stuff.
written by the victor or the people that are there to tell the story.
Right, exactly.
When you look at these giant legends, you've got there's levels of giantism. And this is where I find it fascinating. You've got basically the full-blooded giants, which would be like the Nephilim, where they're direct, basically a direct cross or a hybrid type of situation.
Right.
Then you have where those will breed again with mankind, and they're supposed to be less warlike. They're still big, but they're not the big SOBs that the original guys are. They're not they're not the mean OGs. They're a little bit more civilized. They're ones that were worked into society. They might have had roles where they were. Where does the royal bloodlines come from? Think of it this way. Throughout history, most royal bloodlines have been protected in multiple ways. And royals tend to be taller, as a general rule, than the regular public. But you can't account for that strictly because they got access to better nutrition throughout their life.
Yeah.
Because better nutrition will give you like a 10%
Right.
curve. It's
Yeah.
not going to make you,
Correlation.
when you
or
look
whatever,
at like the ancient Aztecs, all the gods there, the ancient Egyptian gods, when you see them in the hieroglyph, they're always bigger. So why is that? Where is that coming from? So it's just like where there's smoke,
it's
there's
like-
fire.
yeah.
I read one story that there was an Aztec scribe that reported that when the Mexican emperor, I think it was Montezuma, heard the description of the Spaniards arriving with their red beards and their fair skin, he was just filled with fright because he thought, like, these are the giants coming back.
Yeah.
Because think of the Aztecs and the Mayans now. They're a relatively short-statured population.
They were tiny.
And, it's not like the Spaniards were that much bigger, but
Right.
they were a little
Yeah.
bit bigger. But just that you
But
had
they
these
also
fuzzy
came
red
with this
men.
armor, and they had all, they looked bigger.
Yeah.
And,
So-
Thomas Jefferson fancied himself an architect. He actually excavated some Native American Indian mounds because he was looking into this. I think it was in Monticello that he even did some digging. I thought that was kind of interesting when I looked at that. He was just, why would, if
Well,
they're,
I mean,
Well, think of the childhood tale, Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Fee,
Now
fi,
we're
fo,
getting-
fum. I
Yeah.
smell the blood. The giants were eating people. Again,
Yeah.
it ties back. And they believe that the giant in that story, they believe they have tied it to Gog Magog, which is one of the Celtic giants.
Yeah.
But, it's just like, it's the same story, rehashed.
Yeah.
So why do we have this inherent fear of giants?
And maybe some of that is kind of, again, now we're getting into like the truth being mixed with folklore, is like just the overwhelming fear of giants. Maybe they actually didn't eat people, but maybe there was a precedent for like, oh, these scary warmongering people are there. It's like, oh, we're probably going to eat you because of how big they are.
Well,
or something like that.
the biblical
Okay,
giants
okay.
were eating people.
Interesting,
The
okay.
Nephilim were. I
Okay.
mean, the way the story goes is the giants come to be as the union of human women
Yeah.
and angelic, these watchers. They grow to tremendous size, and it takes tons of resources to keep these things sated. And eventually they run out, and then they start eating people.
Gosh.
And so it's the cry to heaven
Yeah.
from what's happening on the earth reaches the heavenly court and such, which then ultimately leads to the flood itself. So I think that the idea of giants eating people go back to even to the very beginning. I think
Yeah.
it
Okay.
shows the corruptive nature
Yeah.
of what they are. They are outside the norm.
I see.
There's something wrong with them.
That's
They can do
interesting.
great things.
Yeah.
I think what was the other another one that was considered a giant was of a biblical figure, the hunter. What's his name? Nimrod.
Okay.
Nimrod the hunter. So he was considered a relative of the giants.
Okay.
They could do tremendous things. I mean, great feats of strength and stuff like that. So, yeah, they are it's very interesting to see that especially the Native American stories of I think I read a story of a tribe that had cornered the last remnants of a giant race into some hills and in a cave, and eventually they basically burned them up or
That's
something.
in
Really?
Utah.
That was in Utah? Yeah. Yeah, they talk about that. So, and then of course, and you got the stories that came out of the Middle East. The giants of Kandahar.
Yeah.
whether whether they actually killed special forces, killed one of these things, and secretly said, "Look, we got to haul this thing off to some secret lab somewhere, like they do with everything else."
Yeah.
I think that would kind of freak people out.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I personally think if they actually produced a body that was 15 feet tall,
Yeah.
that was big and muscular, and I could see how that could cause a bit of some unease.
But what if they're aliens, though? Maybe that's also. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
I mean, I think aliens probably. I think some of this might be aliens.
Really?
Yeah. Because I'm a firm believer. I think aliens have visited planet Earth.
Okay.
So I'm open to that. Those possibilities that there could have been some genetic modifications
I was thinking of
going
that
on.
mostly as like an idea because of the fact that they came back. It feels like they keep coming back, even if they, who knows what, if they keep potentially breeding with humans, and how does that work out? And then they keep coming back throughout history. It's like, how does that all play into?
There's an interesting guy out there. I've mentioned him on the show before, but I've listened to a few of his podcasts. Timothy Marino, I believe, is his name. Okay. He's kind of like a modern day Indiana Jones. I mean, he goes into these far places and studies these cultures and their legends, and he's got a very interesting take on the biblical story of the Enochian story, that with the angels, and he attributed that actually was actually extraterrestrials.
Interesting.
That there was a kingdom, and these other extraterrestrials started doing things they were not supposed to do.
I see. That
caused the war in heaven.
Interesting.
That was the actual war,
like the catalyst,
and that was cows, which created the giants and these kind of derivations of nature and stuff like that, and that led to kind of all the problems. So a lot of those legends have come down, and of course, as thousands of years go by, the story kind of gets gets mythologized a little bit. It just. I mean, I don't know. Some people probably think I'm crazy saying that, but
probably.
We're talking about giants here, so I mean,
just probably think you're crazy.
Okay. Yeah, that wouldn't be the first time. Would not be the first time.
You know what? On this podcast specifically, on the record, I think we've said far crazier things.
Oh yeah,
in our defense.
Ooh.
Yes, we have.
I think so.
I just meant not saying something crazy, but you think they probably think you're crazy.
Yeah. Well, they probably say.
I think a majority of the people who listen to this podcast probably don't think that we're crazy. I think that some people who listen to this podcast are crazier than we are, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I love you all the same.
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting. It's cool to hear that, like we said before, I've looked into some of the giant stuff in the biblical context with the Nephilim, but I never really looked into it as far as like all these other cultures we're talking about. I didn't realize it was so.
It's the same
so
story,
vast.
so many places.
That's interesting.
Yes, and because the stories, what's a telephone game?
Yeah.
After you tell, some things change, but they're so similar through so many different civilizations and continents. It kind of makes you go,
I wonder, besides the flood and besides giants, I wonder what else? Because I know there's probably many things like that kind of span across cultures and time and that kind of stuff. That's interesting to think about.
Well, it's if you there's a lady, I want to say her name is Janet Bond or Janet Bord, Bord or Bond. I'm seeing it two different ways in my head, and she wrote a very interesting book on fairies. But what she did was she analyzed all the fairy tales of yore and of different cultures, and looked at the similarities in how the fairies or fae are described. And then she took that and juxtaposed it with how aliens are currently described. and it's the same story. It's just recycled through it's a new lens.
Yeah.
Same story, new lens. So when you look at, what did the fairies do? The fairies would come and kidnap babies.
Yeah.
They would take people and kidnap them, take them away, live in
tricksters.
they would go into a mound.
Yeah.
The fae, they used to fly around in little machines that people did not know what these were. They had fairy circles.
Mm-hmm.
Where what do we have? Crop circles. They had alien. They had the people leaving sickly babies and taking the healthy ones, or people just disappearing and coming back years later. We have alien abductions.
Oh, yeah.
They had people getting experimented on. We have the same thing.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was that they needed people. The Fae needed mankind's genetics to strengthen something that was inherently missing in the Fae.
Yeah.
And what are the aliens doing? They're taking our DNA to strengthen that something that's inherently missing in aliens.
Interesting. I see.
And when you look at the descriptions of all the different types of Fae, they match up with all the different types of aliens. So, there's you can start to draw some parallels when you start looking at things, with it from painting it with a broad paintbrush.
Yeah.
You can start seeing there's a lot of parallels.
I see someone here called Jeanette Bond.
Okay.
So I think that's one of
Harry Potter.
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
giant
yeah,
in Harry Potter, Hagrid,
Yeah.
that everybody loves
Yeah.
Hagrid. But Hagrid isn't a full-blooded giant. He's a half-blood giant. And that's why the other giants don't like him, is because he's a half-blood. And that's why people tolerate him, because he's a half-blood. But his full-blooded brother is like all the other giants. And his mother they're all mean and they're aggressive. And, even in the realm of Harry Potter, which is just modern folklore.
Yeah.
Actually, the giant was the only thing of that story that she did not steal from Star Wars. She added the giant to change the story just a little bit.
Interesting.
So it's not Star Wars.
Okay.
Young kid goes to live with adopted people.
Right.
The
What's
older guy
Chewbacca?
comes.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Hey. But if you think of it,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
exact same. All she did was add one little thing to change, and it's the same story as.
Interesting.
Well, in Harry Potter, the giants had the giants had mostly been killed off in the Wizarding Wars because they had sided with Voldemort, who
Yeah.
was the big nemesis of the story, because Voldemort promised them freedom so that they could kill whatever Muggles and eat whatever Muggles that they wanted to.
Okay.
Doesn't that tie back with exactly
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, it
it's
does.
the same
Folklore
theme.
stuff, yeah.
It is the same theme.
Yeah. Interesting. That's so fascinating. The transmission from folklore to modern folklore and storytelling and stuff like that. Because even I'm a big fan of Tolkien. Like, I love reading all kinds of stuff from that, and just like the different creatures and fairies or the stuff that he takes from like fairy folklore and things like that to make his own sort of thing, and all that kind of stuff is really interesting to hear about. The same thing with like the fairies and potentially being aliens. That's a first I've heard of something like that, but that's really
It's a very
fascinating.
good book. I really recommend that book. It's an older book. It's been around.
It's called, what's the name of it again?
I want to say it's just called Fairies.
I think
Fairies.
there's one here that says fairies, real encounters with little people by Jeanette Bond. At least I believe that's what that is.
I wonder if that's the same beings that talked to Arthur Stillwell.
No, he said brownies.
Oh yeah.
Brownies.
He
but
said
those are still Fae.
Those are still Fae, but
Those are
he
still Fae.
used the word specifically brownies.
Brownies.
But you know,
He also lived in a time period where people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, everyone was talking to fairies and taking fairy pictures, and it was part of that whole spiritualism thing. I found one reference in my research for today that there's over 1,800 different Native American tribes, and nearly all of them have a large, not fully human being covered in brown or red hair as part of their
Interesting.
as part of their legends.
They really got a thing against gingers. Okay, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Well, that's where the Sasquatch,
Oh yeah.
the Indians,
Yeah.
talk about large, hairy
Isn't
beings.
ginger like or isn't the kind of the red hair?
On Gilligan's Island?
No. Isn't that like a? No. I was gonna say, isn't that also like kind of like not like an anomaly, like a genetic thing?
It
that's like
is more rare,
right.
but if you want to be a little bit morbid, if you're digging up corpses and bodies, very often the hair takes on a red appearance. So if you want to look at things from an archaeological perspective, where let's say, because if you want to buy the party line, they're going to say that people just dug up examples of megafauna, like they dug up like a woolly mammoth head, and because a woolly mammoth head just has one big hole, they said, oh, that's not a mammoth, that's a cyclops. So that's where the cyclops came from, was a woolly mammoth skull that somebody found. And they say that, the mainstream would like to argue that all evidence of giants is just people misidentifying big creatures from the Paleolithic era as being something else. But if you were to dig up, like when you see Egyptian mummies, for example, or if you dig up bodies from the peat bogs throughout, the different areas of Europe that has peat bogs, we have some here in Florida. The hair, as part of the process with decomposition and the chemicals that are involved, does tend to take on a red hue. So a lot of the bodies that have been found, or evidence that have found, they could say, oh, it has red hair, but did it really have red hair in real life, or did it just have red hair in death?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Curious. Well, is there anything else you guys want to touch on for this episode?
No.
Because I think I've hit all the things I was want to talk about. That's really fascinating. The fact that
I'm looking at this article, New York Post. Say scientists still baffled from giant human skeletons up to 10 feet tall decades after initial discovery.
And the crazy thing, like 10 feet tall, that's obviously huge, don't get me wrong. But I wonder, like, I don't know. I wonder if that's just like an interesting genetic thing that went on with that person.
They say a
like,
series of mysterious giant skeletons up to 10 feet tall reportedly discovered in and around Nevada caves last century, dubbed the Giants of Lovelock.
Okay.
They say the claims about supersized humans who roam the area around Lovelock, a remote town 90 miles northeast of Reno, thousands of years ago, are rooted in Native American lore, which tells of fierce, red-headed, pale-skinned giants who arrived from Central America by boat and attacked local tribes. This after years of war, the foreign invaders were chased into a cave and slaughtered in mass.
Dang.
According to stories passed down by the indigenous Paiute, P-A-I-U-T-E people.
Peyote, yeah. I think.
Yeah. They say experts believe the tale of giant warriors' violent extermination is likely a legend, but reports of discoveries made in the area of Lovelock decades ago have continued to raise many unanswered questions. They said they found the first foray into the Lovelock cave was made in 1911 when a pair of miners searching for guano unearthed 60 human skeletons, including some measuring between 7 and 8 feet tall.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I found another
That's a lot.
thing in the archaeological record, and because our whole conversation today has been based on stuff that happened a long time ago, where evidence is slim pickings. But even as recently as the 1920s, Catalina Island, there in California, there was a discovery on Catalina Island of a megalithic burial site that was approximately had 6,000 years of continuous burials on it. They pulled out over 4,000 skeletons, including a succession of kings and queens, some that were more than 9 feet tall.
What?
All of that. And we have evidence of this because all the newspaper accounts and pictures of it and everything that was recorded, because this is 1920, it's the same type of time period that King Tut was being discovered, and all these pictures are in the newspaper realm. They made it to the public media. We have evidence that all this happened.
Not to interrupt you, because it was fashionable to talk about that and put that in the papers.
Oh yeah,
that was the tea.
But it was taken to the Smithsonian and it was moved to a restricted access room, and it has never seen the light of day since.
What?
Yes.
Yeah,
really?
That's why I said earlier the Smithsonian.
Look at here's a whole book on it.
Oh yeah. There you
Look
go.
at There we go.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm just following this article. They say this is pretty interesting. However, it says 2 subsequent excavations that were carried out in 1912 and 1924 brought to light thousands of ancient artifacts, among them a well-worn sandal measuring an astonishing 15 inches in length, which is the equivalent of a modern-day size 29 shoe.
Dang.
For comparison, Shaquille O'Neal, the NBA star,
Yes.
it's 7'1". He wears a 22.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I'm now looking at some of the pictures I have. Yeah.
I've stood beside Shaquille O'Neal on 2 different occasions, and he's
a giant.
He's a big man.
Yes. It's big.
It's crazy. Yeah. Wow. That's speaking of modern day giants. I didn't think about that, but yeah, 7 foot is huge, is what it feels like in modern day standards.
Yeah, so another surprising discovery made inside that same cave was a handprint embedded in the rock face that measured twice the size of an average human palm.
Mm.
So
That's insane.
they also found 2 mummified skeletons in a dry lake bed. Remains reportedly measured 8.5 to 10 feet tall.
And see, like the crazy thing is, like, the part that's, I think, the part for me, which feels so fascinating, is like those skeletons aren't like, I mean, yes, they're big, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it's like outrageously big. Like so big that it's hard to believe, at least for me. Because obviously, like I said, I've seen a 7 foot tall human being before, and I've been to a museum where I saw like a statue of like the tallest recorded man, whether we just talked about, at almost 9 feet tall. And so to think about, like, you know, these skeletons being found that are between, you know, 8 to 10 feet tall, it's like, oh, okay, like I could suspend disbelief enough to feel like it's real. Whereas if you're like, oh, they found these skeletons and they were like 25 feet tall, it's like, well, that's hard to believe, because that's, you know, that feels like it's, you know, fantastical or whatever. But this feels, I don't know, feels like it's within grasp, which is a crazy thing.
Yeah.
Do you think there's still like real life giants like out there today? Or like
you stood next to Shaquille O'Neal.
I know. Well, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, like
Andre the Giant.
I do believe that I will go as far as I do believe in the phenomena of Bigfoot. I do believe that might be something.
Same thing right there. Yep.
Yeah, I think Bigfoot is definitely something.
But again,
to pay attention
look at the different
to.
Civilizations. You got Bigfoot. You got the abominable snowman.
Yeah,
you got
Yeti.
Yeti. You know, there always seems to be in these little stories. Kind of, they tell it a little differently.
Same but different.
They all seem, the same but different.
Yowie, like every
Yeah.
culture has one.
Yeah,
Interesting.
this culture, these red-headed giants were known as the Sai-Ti-Ka.
Okay.
Maybe Miranda, it's Si-Te-Cah. Sai-Ti-Ka. This tribe, this is what these giants belong to. They say they came. Legend has it they came to Nevada from a distant land some 3,000 years ago, after crossing the ocean in boats made from bulrush plant.
How did you end up in Nevada?
Well, what we called Nevada at that time, it's just land. There is no name to it.
But back then, was it water? Because the Grand Canyon came from something.
You're right.
So there was some water moving from point A to point B at some time.
Remember, they've also allegedly found ancient Egyptian temples built in the Grand Canyon. So, you know, there's a whole other cover-up story about that one if you were to, you know, go down another rabbit hole.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I think that goes back to what I said. I think I do believe that there was some degree of a high civilization that existed, and I think it was destroyed. And I mean, if you read anything on the Younger Dryas, the North American continent was like center, like bullseye. Yeah, that really got hit. I mean, a vast array of species went suddenly extinct. You know, the woolly mammoth, the giant ground sloth, the saber-toothed cat, all of that just disappears off the historical record right about that time.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think probably whatever existed at that time, their world was rocked.
Oh yeah.
And if the way human civilizations work, you always build alongside water,
Yeah.
because that's where you're going to get food from.
Yep.
So guess what happens when the sea rises another 400 feet?
Yeah. Right.
Well, there's a lot of land that's now underwater.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I was thinking about Nevada from my modern day perspective of it, because I was like, how would you end up in just like the middle of America? But I didn't think about the fact that it's probably
That might have been beachfront property back then.
exactly. I
Yeah.
didn't think about that, but yeah, that's true.
When you look at all of the history, all the records of each wave of people that came to the United States, like, right from like when the Spaniards were coming, when Magellan's fleet anchored in Port San Giuliano, a giant appeared on the beach to greet them.
Yeah.
And that is in the written document. When Sir Francis Drake anchored in 1578, he didn't report a giant, but he did report that several men were well over 7 feet tall in height.
See, like
When Anthony Knijvet, which was a Dutch explorer, he visited in 1592, he wrote of men that were 10 to 12 feet tall in height.
wow.
And then Wilhelm Schoften in 1615, him and his Dutch crew found a whole slew of skeletons that were between 10 and 11 feet tall. So it's just like giants and the giant narrative have been part of the American narrative for a long time.
That's interesting.
Yep.
A lot of there's a heavy American.
But it's kind of been erased
It
Yeah.
because they don't
erased.
want that narrative out there.
They
Columbus came. That was the first people here in America. Oh wait, well the Native Americans, we're just gonna put them on reservations, but they don't want that out there. At one time, I believe, the American continent was busy.
Oh
was
yeah.
very very
Yeah.
busy.
That's
You know,
crazy.
here it said the tale of the towering Auburn-locked barbarians echoes a legend that Spanish conquistador Pedro Cieza de Leon recorded in the 16th century, retelling an ancient Peruvian tale about a race of giants who came by sea in rafts of reeds after the manner of large boats. Some of the men were so tall that from knee down, they were as big as the length of an ordinary fair-sized man.
What?
De Leon wrote in the Crónica del Peru. So
Yeah.
there's a lot, especially in South America, there's a lot of stuff there regarding giants that came by sea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. I know Graham Hancock talks a lot about it, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. After the Younger Dryas and a lot of this got flooded out, some of these people made their way to these shores
Yeah.
and passed on a lot of stuff. Some of them were good, some of them were not so good.
But you got to remember, everything is perspective too. I don't know why this just kind of popped into my head. You're talking about you stood next to Shaquille O'Neal one time.
Yeah.
There is a time when Shaquille O'Neal and some of his basketball buddies appeared on what is that with Steve Harvey, the game show
Family Feud.
Oh.
Family Feud, and Shaquille O'Neal is standing next to Steve Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, when a guest is there, Steve Harvey reaches over and puts his hand on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, when he did the same thing to Shaquille O'Neal, it was his butt cheek that his hand was on. And he was going, oh, this is going to be uncomfortable. And Shaquille reached up and put his hand on his butt. It was a funny video. But in perspective,
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
Steve Harvey came to
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal.
And he doesn't look like he's a small man.
And he doesn't look
No.
like
Yeah,
he really doesn't. But hello.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
perspective for you. So if you've got somebody, looking like that, even that's a giant to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's
That's
a
what, and
giant.
that's what the comment that I made earlier was, like, again, we're talking about, obviously, people from the ranges of like 7 to 10 or even crazy 12 feet tall. It's like that, once you start getting into that level, it's like, okay, that's a little hard for me to wrap my
Still
head around.
plausible.
Yeah.
But,
But once we start talking about people that could potentially be within like 8 to 10 feet tall, I'm like, that's for me is like, I could definitely see
Some genetic anomaly.
Yeah. Or like again a group of people that have a genetic anomaly. Again,
Right.
you know, some sort of situation like I said, with red hair, and you know how that would all happen. You know, I don't know. It's just crazy to think about, and it doesn't feel like it's so outlandish. You know, especially you know, I don't know. That's crazy. That's cool to talk about. Well, if anybody wants to let us know what you think about this, if you have any personal stories,
If
or
you've met any
if you've met any giants yourself, you know, let us know. We have comment sections on Spotify and on YouTube where you can leave some more short form responses. And we also have an email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, where you can send your more long form responses if you need that. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We really appreciate it. We are on, I think, all the major podcasting platforms, so be sure to follow us wherever you can. And until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone, and God bless.
Take care.
Hey, I'm not going to do a closing for this one, but since my wife reminded me I had another joke for y'all, I'm going to leave with this. What is the only difference between a hooker and a liberal Democrat? Care to make a guess?
I don't even want to say anything.
Look at Ian's turning red.
I'm like, no, I don't even want to do that.
I don't have a clue.
You don't have a clue? A hooker will stop screwing you when you run out of money. Thanks for joining us. You're the best. Peace.